Hello everybody and welcome to another weekend edition of Raw Tropical Living. I'm Jack and I will be your host today. A little bit more formal introduction there. It's a nice gray Saturday here in South Alabama. It's going to be gray all weekend and that's okay. I have some things to do and it's going to kind of set the mood, set the tone for just kind of a chill weekend, but get stuff done. And also won't feel too bad about being cooped up in the house. Today's one I'm really looking forward to talking about. When my weekend talks jump out at me during the week, I know it's going to be a good one because it's something that really grabs my attention. Incidentally, before I get started too much with this video, I wanted to say again, please come over and subscribe to my blog at rawtropicalliving.com. I've been kind of floating a few ideas and I'm going to start sharing more stuff over there. I'm going to share more stuff like this. I might possibly do, and it's not going to take away from the videos here, but I might possibly do one video a week in addition to what I'm doing here that's shared just over there. And I'll get a little bit off the subject. I'll probably get off food a little bit more, but also I'm going to do some giveaways over there. But anyhow, today, as you've seen, the title is A Love Supreme, Zen, Meditation, and Jazz. It's going to be interesting. I do videos every day, so if you're not already subscribed to the channel, I'd really appreciate it if you'd hit that subscribe button and come back and check out some more videos. Then click on the little bell and check send notifications so you'll stay subscribed. This reading today is coming from, I went down to Pensacola on Tuesday, and I guess this is an every bi-monthly, or bi-monthly, does that mean every 2 months? There's only 6 editions of these a year. I wish it was monthly. The Lion Drawer, it's a little Buddhist publication. I forgot what it used to be, Shambhala, something like that. So I got a new one and I'm reading through there, and within just a few minutes, like I said, oh, this is it. Now, I've been into jazz probably about 25 years now. I didn't listen to it my whole life, and I remember getting into jazz about between 20 and 25 years ago, because I kind of remember the period, and I remember I bought at the time, I think at one time I bought like about 6 or 7 CDs, and I had some recommendations from a couple of friends, and of course one of the people that on anybody's list, if you're listening to some good old jazz music, is John Coltrane. And this particular, this is one of his albums, A Love Supreme. Now, I have listened to Coltrane. You know, I didn't really study his story, whatever, but I have listened to Coltrane for all these 20, 25 years. Loved his music. He and Miles Davis are just it for me, you know. There's a lot of stuff I like, but he and Miles Davis, separately and collaborating, just like, oh yeah, that's what it's about. But when I read this article, I was absolutely blown away, thinking like, man, I didn't know anything about this guy, where he was coming from, what was behind the music, what the music meant to him, and what he was trying to say to others through it. So I hope you guys will really enjoy this one. This is Zen teacher and musician Sean Murphy looks at the spiritual search of jazz great John Coltrane. One pre-dawn morning in 1964, the already legendary saxophonist John Coltrane was sitting in meditation in his Long Island home when the structure and themes of his masterpiece, the album A Love Supreme, came to him in their entirety. It was the first time I had it all, he said, as reported by his wife, the pianist and harpist Alice Coltrane, with whom he shared a practice of meditation and a deep interest in all things spiritual. This was not the first time that Coltrane, who came to consider his musical improvisation a form of meditation in itself, experienced what he thought of as divine grace. He had sweated out addiction, his first failed path to transcendence, in 1957 after what he described as a life-changing spiritual experience that helped him overcome heroin and alcohol and set him on search for other means of transcendence through meditation, prayer, and music. 51 years after his death in 1967, Coltrane remains a cultural and spiritual icon, exerting an influence over jazz that is impossible to escape, so much so that it gave rise to a St. John Coltrane Church. Based in San Francisco, the SJCC is an actual community of worship that uses a love supreme. Coltrane's signature work is scripture and hymnal. Before Coltrane, jazz was largely regarded as a sensual, even risque form of expression, linked as much to libation as to liberation. But jazz and spirituality have always been connected. Jazz is an improvisational art form. It requires total immersion in the moment. I have long been struck by the unusual purity of the best jazz, despite the fact that it was so often developed under the most impure of conditions: smoky clubs, alcohol, drugs, and the inescapable burden of racism. How could this be possible? As a Zen practitioner and musician myself, I feel the answer lies in a brand of what we in Zen call working Samadhi, an immersion in moment-to-moment activity so complete that it essentially becomes a meditative state. Improvisational music, at least at the level of complexity exhibited by jazz, requires a putting aside of the ego. If you start thinking of good or bad, try to impress, become distracted by the flub note of the last moment, try to anticipate the next moment, or give yourself over to anything else but what's happening now, you're lost. To play truly great improvisational music, you have to lose yourself. The best musicians, like Coltrane, are able to summon an immersion in the moment that can transcend even the worst environments, personal problems, or state of health. Of course, this doesn't mean that certain players don't inflate themselves after the fact, building themselves up and taking credit for what, in essence, had passed through them. But Coltrane was not one of these. You could say the truest and deepest improvisation is an act of faith, because the player never knows what's going to happen. This is something Coltrane knew, especially in the later years of his work, and expressed consciously through both words and music. Well known for his deep inner interest in meditation in the traditions of Hinduism and Buddhism, he made a special effort to visit Zen temples during his 1966 tour of Japan, and quoted from the Platform Sutra of the Sixth Ancestor of Zen in one of his late interviews. His spiritual taste remained eclectic, ranging from Krishnamurti through to the Quran, the Bible, and even Edgar Cayce, and he retained a largely theistic view of the absolute. A Love Supreme is clearly presented as an offering to God as Supreme Being. The spiritual substance of that album in no way compromised its appeal. It remains the second best-selling jazz album of all time after Miles Davis' Kind of Blue, another excellent one, on which Coltrane also appears. Still, experiencing the supreme love depicted in this music, not to mention in the far more difficult music of Coltrane albums still to come, like Meditations, Ascension, and Om, can at times be a challenge for listeners. A Love Supreme pushes against the boundaries that the later Coltrane would dispense with entirely as he delved ever further into free jazz, sometimes devolving into apparently random non-harmonic honks and squeals that explored the far edges of musicality, his instrument, and at times the patience of his listeners. But isn't that the way the spiritual life is? The embrace of life in its fullest involves pain as well as beauty. That's basic Buddhism. And thus in Coltrane's challenging later albums, which can be described variously as going far beyond simply meditating to pleading, extorting, and crying out to the heavens, or as some have suggested, speaking to God in a language only he could understand. These works were intended by Coltrane as 100% spiritual testament, the communication of an ongoing endless spiritual quest into mystery, rather than any kind of peaceful and harmonious arrival at answers. It's an approach quite similar to the ongoing, ever-deepening questioning of Zen koan practice. This is something Coltrane himself well understood, as suggested by his reference to the Platform Sutra in this description of his evolution. There is never any end. There are always new sounds to imagine, new feelings to get at. And always there's a need to keep purifying these feelings and sounds so that we can really see what we've discovered in its pure state, so that we can see more clearly what we are. In that way, we can give to those who listen the essence, the best of what we are. But to do that at each stage, we have to keep on cleaning the mirror. The divine forces breaths through us all, said Coltrane, and the last years of his life can be seen as an attempt, sometimes a struggle, to breathe God through his horn. Once you become aware of this force for unity in life, wrote Coltrane in the liner notes for 1966's Meditations, his follow-up to A Love Supreme, you can't forget it. It becomes part of everything you do. My goal in meditating on this through music, however, remains to uplift people as much as I can, to inspire them to realize more and more their capacities for living meaningful lives. I believe in all religions, Coltrane said. The truth itself doesn't have any name on it to me, and each person has to find it for themselves. Man, I just got goosebumps when I read that earlier this week. It was just a connection with an artist that it was also one of those, man, how have I never really looked into this guy, seen what he was about, you know, read a biography, or at least just checked out Wikipedia. This is good stuff right here. I wanted to go back to one little passage here. He's talking about Zen, but I think this can very much sum up like mindfulness, and that's what this paragraph jumped out at me. How could this be possible? As a Zen practitioner and musician myself, I feel the answer lies in a brand of what we call Zen, what we in Zen call working Samadhi, an immersion in moment-to-moment activity so complete that it essentially becomes a meditative state. Moment to moment, in the now, be here now, all this stuff, it's all about the present moment. If we do our best, we get our most information, we understand the most, we function the best when we were in that moment. When we're living in the past, when we're living in the future, when we're thinking ahead, we're not there. Improvisational music, at least at the level of complexity exhibited by jazz, requires a putting aside of the ego. If you start thinking of good or bad, and that's the whole, I do that in my meditation practice, the thoughts that are come up, you're not judging anything as good or bad. It's an observation of the moment. It is what it is. But yeah, this was just, this was really nice. I enjoyed reading this article and learning this little bit about Mr. Coltrane. Now, if we weren't on YouTube, I'd probably have a little Coltrane playing here, but it kind of sparked me. I think I might start doing something live, say on Facebook or Instagram regularly on Sunday mornings, maybe the Jazz Hour or whatever, because on Instagram you can have, oh, that's right, it'd have to be Instagram. Facebook has those copyright things too, but on Instagram you can play a little music in the background. But anyhow, hope you guys enjoyed this one today. If you like it, please give me a thumbs up, and I hope you're having a beautiful weekend. Love you guys. Peace.